Joining us on set now, senior writer, investigative reporter for the Huffington Post, Radley Balko. He's out now with the new book, Rise of the Warrior Cop, the Militarization of America's Police Forces. Radley, it's great to have you here, and explain how we've gotten to this point now in 2013 where the line is so blurred between military soldier and cop.
Yeah, so this is an important line that we've respected for a long time in this country, this idea that, you know, soldiers and police have very different missions, and it's dangerous to start to conflate the two in a free society. And what's happened over the last generation or so, it began with the drug war, is the Pentagon started giving away this military equipment to police agencies across the country, and we're talking, you know, tanks and armored personnel carriers, helicopters, you know, high-powered weapons, bayonets for some reason. Police agencies love bayonets. And so once they have this equipment, then they've started forming these SWAT teams. The increase in the number of SWAT teams across the country is really dramatic. In the early 80s, about 15% of towns of 25,000 or more people had a SWAT team. Today, it's well over 80%. And the total number of SWAT raids has gone from about 3,000 per year, actually from a few hundred per year in the 70s to a few thousand per year in the 80s to 50,000 SWAT raids per year in this country today.
But the crime rate has gone down.
Yep.
So isn't this, is there an argument that this is actually working? I mean, look at here in New York City,
Sure.
It's plummeted dramatically, especially the murder rate. And you're seeing that in cities across the country, although crime is rising in the suburbs.
Well, here's the thing. The vast majority of these raids are done are to serve search warrants on people suspected of nonviolent consensual drug crimes. That is not what's affecting the crime rate. In fact, drug use has not gone down at all. It's stayed about the same since this trend started. So there's really no evidence that the use of SWAT teams is what has brought down the crime rate. The crime rate's dropped criminologists are still fighting over what actually has caused the crime drop. But these are mostly done on people who are suspected of these consensual crimes. And, you know, there was a time when SWAT teams were used only in these really emergency-type situations where you had hostage takings or an active shooter or an escaped fugitive. And then, you're using violence to diffuse an already violent situation, right, where their lives on the line. The problem with how SWAT teams are overwhelmingly used today is that you're creating violence and confrontation where there was none before. You're breaking into people's homes. You're putting them in this very kind of primal state of trying to figure out what to do when armed men are breaking into their house.
Well, it's interesting. In the 90s, starting with President Clinton and the crime bill, the emphasis for police forces, you're clearly right about the build-up of SWAT teams, was community policing, was getting in the neighborhood, getting to know the neighbors, and it was community policing has been pretty effective.
Well, actually, and community policing is great, and all the police officers and police chiefs I talked to in the book endorse it. The one problem with that program during the Clinton administration is that there was no oversight on how that money was spent once it reached the police departments. And actually, there have been some studies done that have shown that a lot of police departments use those grants to start SWAT teams.
Hardware, yeah. But the ones who used it well, we got 1,000 new policemen in Philadelphia. We put them all on the street, everybody on patrol, no special teams, and we got to relate better with the neighborhoods. And that's the thing that brings crime down most of all.
No, I agree. And the idea that cops should have a stake in the communities that they're policing, and the people in those communities should see them as part of the community, that's effective policing. Because then people actually go to the cops and give them tips, they cooperate with them, and it's not an us versus them sort of thing.
Right.
Yeah?
Well, it's a concept that's fascinating. I didn't see those numbers before. And the book is called The Rise of the Warrior Cop, the Militarization of America's Police Forces. Radley Balko, thanks for coming on today.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me on.
Coming up next.